what if right now is bad enough? Let right now be your rock bottom. Your eating disorder is never going to say, okay, that's enough now, you're free. You have to choose recovery despite that. You can do that now, or you can do that in 10 years time after wasting another 10 years with your life being controlled by this illness. Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Millie and I have fully recovered from an eating disorder that ruined my life for quite a few years. Today, you guys get to eat with me while I tell you why you should make this year the year that you recover for good. Full recovery, full food freedom and full body confidence, because it is 100% possible. And that is coming from someone who hated their body for so many years and had so many disordered rules around food even before it developed into an eating disorder. Disordered habits and disordered thoughts can control your life just as much as a full-blown eating disorder can. You convincing yourself that you can do like half and half, still dabble in your eating disorder and live a perfectly fulfilling life isn't true. You cannot do it. This is what I've got for lunch today. I'm absolutely obsessed with these lentil cakes and I have them with cream cheese and tomato on them. They're so good. I've got some veggie cocktail sausages, got some apple, and I've got some Crispies. I think the most important thing to admit to yourself is that a life with an eating disorder isn't a life at all. The disorder is going to try and convince you that you can do both, that you can have a fulfilling life and still keep just a little bit of control. You know, realistically, you can spend the rest of your life this way. Like, you can spend the rest of your life with these disordered thoughts and these food rules, but is that a life that you want to spend? Is that going to be a life worth living? When you get to the end of it, are you going to be lying there on your deathbed and go, thank God I spent the last 60 years counting calories? No, you're not. I genuinely think that if I spent my entire life feeling like that, I would regret it. If you got told tomorrow that you only had a week to live, would you spend that week restricting? No, I don't think you would. And I want to make it clear that this doesn't just apply to restrictive eating disorders. I think that it's really unhelpful to categorize eating disorders like you have this one or this one or this one, because as a whole they all kind of work together. As soon as you can like realize that, then it definitely helps the recovery process. And you know, by full recovery I'm talking about getting completely eating disorder free. I'm not talking about swapping restriction for over exercising or alternating between super restrictive eating and binge eating. I'm not talking about going from purging to only eating super healthy clean foods and suddenly becoming vegan and not eating gluten, because a lot of the time all of these things come from the same root, and that is the eating disorder. Another thing I really want to express is that recovery is possible for anyone. I don't care how many years you've been struggling with your eating disorder. I don't care if your case is super complex. You know, you could be suffering from 3 different sorts of eating disorder. You could be having other mental health problems on the side. It doesn't mean that you can't recover from your eating disorder. On top of having an eating disorder, I was also struggling with exercise addiction, body dysmorphia, and whenever I wasn't restricting, I was binge eating. So I genuinely thought that I couldn't recover because I would just develop binge eating disorder. I know now that that was just my eating disorder trying to come up with excuses as to why I couldn't possibly recover. I was never at a critically low weight, and this is another excuse that my eating disorder came up with as to why I couldn't possibly choose recovery. I was convinced that I needed to be X amount of weight, or I needed to be suffering for X amount of time. I had to have been hospitalised, I had to have been tube fed. I had all of these things that had to happen before I was allowed to choose recovery, which is totally delusional, because what was going to happen? I was going to get to that point where I was on the brink of death in hospital being fed through a tube, and then I was suddenly going to turn around and go, you know what, I can let this eating disorder go now. No, of course that was never going to happen. Your eating disorder is never going to say, okay, that's enough now, you're free, because that's not how it works. You have to choose recovery despite that. You can do that now, or you can do that in 10 years time after wasting another 10 years with your life being controlled by this illness. So don't wait. There is no sick enough. You're never going to get to this point where recovery is suddenly easy. You're never going to get to a point where you're suddenly allowed to recover or you're deserving of recovery, because there is no sick enough when it comes to these illnesses. Another reason why I felt like I couldn't possibly recover is because I had other mental health problems, and I knew that if I wasn't restricting my eating, then those problems would get worse. I was like, you know what? Having an eating disorder is probably the safer option than the alternatives that I thought I was going to resort to if I chose recovery. And you know what? My general mental health did get a lot worse for a while. In the end, I was then only dealing with those other mental health problems rather than my eating disorder as well. So yes, I was still struggling, but I was struggling and I didn't have an eating disorder. I was struggling, but I was free to get up in the morning and make a breakfast that I really enjoyed. I had these other problems, but food was no longer one of them. I truly believe that it's better to just be trying to deal with one problem than it is to have loads of problems that you're balancing. You know, you can convince yourself that your eating disorder is a coping strategy and that it actually makes life better, but realistically it doesn't. If I was trying to recover from my other mental health problems, as I have been in the past couple of years, whilst also still having an eating disorder, it would have been impossible. If you have other mental health issues and you're convinced that you can't recover from your eating disorder because of them, that again is the disorder just trying to convince you to stay. At some point you've got to take the leap, and maybe things will feel worse for a while, but it's not going to be like that forever. Sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better. Sometimes you do have to hit that rock bottom to build yourself back up again. And just know that that rock bottom is different for everyone. You can't look at someone else's lowest point and think, oh my gosh, I've never been that bad, so I don't deserve to get better yet. What if right now is bad enough? Let right now be your rock bottom. Don't waste another year of your life spent like this. You want your head to be a nice place to be. You don't want to dread waking up in the morning. You don't want your whole life to be controlled by these negative thoughts and feelings and these rituals that you have to do. You are so much more than your eating disorder. There is so much more to you. Even if you've been struggling for, I don't care, 10, 20 years, you still have a personality outside of your eating disorder. You're still loved and respected by people for so many more reasons than your eating disorder. Chances are people probably prefer you without it. I know that my friendship strengthened as soon as I was able to be fully present and I wasn't constantly being dictated to by the eating disorder. It's easy to feel like you are the person with the eating disorder, that is your whole personality, but that's not what you bring to the table, you know. People don't actually care about that. That's not what they value about you, and that's just another disordered thought that can easily sneak its way in. What tends to happen is we spend so much time and so much of our brain space is taken up by the eating disorder and by food that we don't have any mental capacity to think about other things. So we neglect our relationships, we don't think about our future, we don't really care about a career, we don't have hobbies, because all of that time and that energy that we would be putting into those things, we're putting into thinking about food, making food, eating food, whereas food should just be something that allows you to do all of these other amazing things in life. It shouldn't be life's whole focus. And when food is life's whole focus, then it's easy to see how your eating disorder becomes your whole personality, because you're just not putting the time and energy into those other things that make you you. So it can be scary choosing recovery and feeling like you don't have a personality and you don't have any future plans. It can feel safe staying in your eating disorder because it stops you from having to think about those things. But I promise, as soon as you've chosen recovery and you're properly better, thinking about the future and having hobbies and spending time with people will actually just become enjoyable, and it will naturally work itself out. It will no longer be scary thinking about your future, because you'll enjoy spending time doing that, because you aren't exhausted from spending the whole day counting calories and thinking about how much you hate yourself. My life has improved drastically since I properly recovered from my eating disorder, and even the difference between being semi-recovered and fully recovered is absolutely insane. Like many people, I spent quite a lot of time in a state where I was able to live life like a properly functioning human being. I was doing everything that a non-eating disorder person does, However, I still had these thoughts, even if I wasn't acting on them. I still kind of felt guilt around food. I had to make a conscious effort not to count calories. From time to time it felt like I was binge eating. I still didn't like my body and I found it difficult to look in the mirror. But you know, that's like loads of people in society, right? Probably the majority of people are like that. But I knew that that isn't how I wanted to live my life. I'd got this far, I'd built myself back up. I went from my rock bottom to this point. Why stop there? And I'm so glad that I kept going and that I chose a full recovery and that I didn't stop fighting just because it was easier to settle for a life that was mostly recovered, because it is. I kept going and I fully recovered. I got to a point where I don't have any disordered thoughts around food. I don't even consider counting calories. I look in the mirror and I just see me. I see my body and I see myself for who I actually am. I'm able to live life fully in the moment, and I'm also able to do things that I never would have been able to do without extreme distress in my semi-recovered state. For example, I'm now in full-time ballet training, so I spend around 42 hours a week doing intense exercise, which obviously sounds like a hell of a lot, and it is. And it means that I have to be very careful when it comes to fueling my body intentionally. It means that obviously being in a ballet environment, I'm also surrounded by a lot of people who have very disordered habits. I know for a fact that if I wasn't fully recovered before going there, that so quickly I would end up relapsing and that I would spiral straight back down to where I was. It's only by being fully recovered and not having those thoughts at all that I'm able to cope so well. I'm not having to fight against any urge to relapse. It also does mean that I'm able to exercise to that extent without it becoming disordered in any way. For example, right now I'm on my Christmas holidays. I'm literally not exercising at all and I don't feel any guilt about it, even though my body is used to exercising all day every day. I don't feel like I need to keep that up or that I have to do that in order to eat whatever I want, but I probably would start being like that if I wasn't fully recovered. I made the decision that I wasn't going to miss out on amazing life experiences like that just so I can maintain my eating disorder and stay looking a particular way or stay in control. All of my best experiences in life have occurred since recovering from my eating disorder. Genuinely, I cannot express in how many ways it has made my life better. And at the time when I chose to fully recover, I had absolutely no idea what a good decision I was making. I knew that it was the right thing to do, but I didn't actually realise to what extent it would transform my life. So this is me telling you from someone who has been in your position now that you're not only doing the right thing, but you are doing the best thing to get the most out of your life. I also want to add that the best time to start is right now. I'm not talking about tomorrow, I'm not talking about on Monday or next week or next month or once you've hit this final goal. Literally right now. Like if you're watching this video and it's lunchtime and you're watching me eat lunch, go get some lunch. And don't you dare just eat today and then wake up the next day and tell yourself that it was a binge and that you're going to start over and that it was just like a cheat day. No, you can start now and continue like this for the rest of your life. You don't have to go back, you don't have to start convincing yourself that you're just binge eating or that this is just a phase. You can choose proper, lasting recovery today. My biggest fears when I chose to fully recover from my eating disorder were that I was developing or was going to develop binge eating disorder, which I didn't. However, I did spend a lot of time eating. I ate a lot of food and that is because my body needed it. And I do genuinely think that the best way to heal your relationship with food properly is by giving yourself unconditional permission to eat. Recovery isn't meant to be comfortable. In fact, a lot of the time it's really difficult and it is distressing. But it doesn't mean that you're doing the wrong thing. It doesn't mean that you're failing. And it doesn't mean that you're just developing a new eating disorder. That is the eating disorder itself telling you otherwise. Another thing that I really struggled with was fear that I was going to keep eating forever and keep gaining weight forever, and I know that that's a real fear for a lot of people, and again that comes from a lot of the time having this overwhelming urge to just keep eating, especially in early recovery. And let me just tell you that that is so normal and it is a natural response to what you've been doing to your body. Even if you haven't just been purely restricting, I promise you, your body is making up for the years, the weeks, the months, however long it's just been in these disordered patterns. It doesn't matter if you're not underweight, it doesn't matter if your eating disorder hasn't made you lost weight. Chances are when you choose full recovery, you are going to need to eat a lot of food, and you just have to trust the process. You have to listen to that hunger, whether it's mental or physical, and it will stop. It will naturally just fizzle out and you won't even notice it happening, and you will naturally find your correct body type and the size that you're meant to be. Don't let your fears become excuses as to why you shouldn't fully recover from your eating disorder. Trust me, it will be the best thing that you ever do. Right now, right in this very minute, is the perfect time to start. I promise. If you have any questions or any fears, anything else you want me to talk about on this topic, or any ways that I can support you through this process, then please just comment them, because I will get back to you and I will be here to support you and your journey in any way that I possibly can. You're not alone in this, and I promise that it is going to get easier. You have a fully eating disorder free life ahead of you that is going to be so worth living. So don't give up. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I'll hopefully speak to you guys again soon. Bye.